through them, it makes sense to leave them on here because I think both of them are good things for us to move forward with. Um, so we struggled, I think, for a number of years with how to have programming available to help folks when they're having trouble getting their water sewer bill paid. And I think Leanne's worked on this in conjunction with Treasury and Public Works. A way to kind of put together for people that are under the 80% AMI. Have a program available to help them if their water bill gets out of control to avoid shutoff. The goal is to get to a point where we just don't have shutoffs anymore. Instead, have a program to keep their water on and help them that. So you kind of see like a layout here of how she proposes that we would implement it and what eligibility would look like. As the rises for the folks, they would get a smaller benefit. For example, you see on here somebody that's under 50% of the get up to 75% credit, $750, but somebody at 80% AMI can only get 25% credit. So the idea of having some funds available to help our folks that are in the most amount of. I think we've gone back and forth, and I think how are we going to fund this? I think we've gone back and forth with how what's the we don't really think that we can necessarily with like water and sewer dollars necessarily. We don't think that's a legitimate use for opportunities to use some of our CDBG money and some of our other pots of money. We've also gone back and forth with Treasury about what the feasibility of this. Go to the pharmacy and you have an opportunity to round up your whatever you paid. So say your bill came to $8.47, you have an opportunity to round up to $9. We're thinking that assuming that our we could give people an option to voluntarily round up their water bills each month or 1 month after put aside to help the program like this, especially for the folks that are below our assistance. So I'll answer any questions that you have about it to the best I can, but there's a chance that you guys, after reading this, would know just as as kind of.
Okay, so at this point, it's a proposal still in the works. We have to work with State Treasury Department, and we still have to determine a source in order to
Yes.
Mr. Ramsey.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First and foremost, City Manager, happy birthday.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. And secondly, I think that this sounds like an amazing opportunity for our neighbors. Bullet Community Encompass, I've been Brett and her team in Treasury to get back to water bills paid and things like that, making sure that she's connected. This looks amazing. I support it 100%. I think that we need to, as we move forward, be careful to not duplicate and to collaborate. So with other agencies and opportunities in our offer these same services. I'd like to sit down. I could throw some names at you. We could get a group together so that they can be a part of the discussions of how this is implemented. And I don't mean that they need to tell you, but being that they have that experience, this is awesome, eh? So let's get the experts in the room, figure out what it is, and if there's places that we can send them first so that then we become a payer of last resort, but a payer nonetheless. It helps to make those dollars go farther and then to really show our neighbors that we're intentional with the monies that they are gracefully giving to us or that we're taking from another. But in the meantime, this is amazing and congrats to Leanne and her team.
Get into a point where we're not shutting anybody off.
Sure. And I guess I didn't get into if you look on the second page, there's another component to it.
Yes. Absolutely. And this, whether we understand it or not and how it works, but these sorts of programs have a huge effect on housing sustainability and safe housing in our community because people without a huge process, eh? But they can shut off your lights, and if you have 3 or 4 So this is a wonderful step forward in the direction of that sustainable housing.
Anything Commissioner Renz was saying about?
I would just support Commissioner Ramsey's ideas that ready, so we should definitely agree. We want to make sure we have a system that's functioning together. Let's go to the city. Have to. Question I had was about the we do checkoffs already, right? No, maybe this could be on there.
Yeah. Any input, Commissioner Emery?
No, sounds I go along with because there are other programs and
Yep.
I don't want to double it, repeat it. So
Right. No, and a lot of those funding streams that if you don't use it, you lose it, eh?
Mm-hmm.
And so let's tap them out first, and then make sure that our partners at 211 understand the way that these service streams work, and then as it flows from agency to agency with either eligibility or requirements and actual dollars available, it eventually shows up to us. And with us being so high at the 80% AMI, even if it's only a 25% savings, a lot of funders restrict their opportunities to 50% and below. And so that really opens up.
and one time a year only.
Yes, exactly. And so this could be something that could be packaged or built upon or added to at the end once they've gone through a funding cycle. And I don't need to own it. I don't need to be in this room. That's not what I'm offering. I'm just saying that I can set you up with people that do this and do it well.
Right.
And answer us to lean into the team that is our city.
And there's examples of these, type of funding mechanisms, even like with the Muskegon Promise, after you've exhausted all the potentialities for then you tap the promise funds.
Yeah.
So
And kudos on the build out of the income. What a lot of our local social service agencies operate on is what same breakout. They do a 1 to 30, 30 to 50, and then 50 to 80. So this looks very much like it being without us having to reinvent a system of
get this proposal. At this point, we're still working department to make how to do it is anything to add regarding support or not for continuing to work out this proposal?
Opportunity to review it and also confer with for quite some time. Pretty much the outstanding questions I had were the same ones that it sounds like you all had, which is with regard to funding and the amounts and sources and administration of the program. But the contours of it seem to be solid and it seemed to be exemplary as well. So I'm pleased that we're looking at helping people in terms of conservation, energy, things. So
Continue on. Do this good work. Anything else before we move on to item number two, sanitation policy?
This is another one of Leanne. Moving on this, two things. Commissioner German asked us based on some complaints he got from people. But also we received like pretty much all week, like they live
Budget.
Okay. Well, so they're everywhere.
Commissioner Ramsey and I got an ear.
yeah. So that's and thank Leanne wherever she is today, feeling better. Hope it helps, Leanne. Is that when Commissioner Johnson German and I were at a community meeting at McLaughlin. Thank you. It's real.
Yes.
It is
Oh, it's
real
real.
and it is agitating to many people. See, I live on a corner, so the only trash can I see is mine. And I just yell at somebody to go get it if it's been out there for too long.
Right. No, it really is. It's a horrendous issue. 1400 block or so. The hoppers are out in the street for a week till we go pull. You call, public works or whatnot, and it just gets. People forget week to week. You real them out. So there's actually piles of garbage up against houses and what. Issue in many neighborhoods.
We already have these orders. 24 hours, they have to be pulled back within 24 hours. You can't store your garbage can in front of your house. It has to be behind the front line.
Right. Yeah, I think the issue has been
Yes.
this.
Yeah.
Yep. There's
And this reinforces ought to be.
Yeah, I've been hearing complaints. And people just not either. I mean, they just leave it and walk their garbage, or they.
clarify a lot of these rules do exist now. This makes them very clear. The idea 10 feet behind the front of your house or screened. I don't think that's quite as clear. Not do that. They'll have to put it around the side of their house. Get back 10 feet, they'll have with a piece of fencing. Keep them a little out of sight, a little more out of sight than maybe the current rules. I think Leanne felt that this would give us a little more enforcement. As clear what's a violation and what's not.
Yeah, I didn't compare it to the. I just know the ordinance.
Yeah.
Language.
The ordinance there now, staff is going to develop the guidelines for how.
Commissioner Ramsey?
Than the previous iteration. Job. And as they're looking at the implementation guidelines and how we're going to create a system of accountability for our neighbors, me included, for all of our neighbors, me included, I wouldn't mind if there was a way for us to neighbors, not their landlords if they're in a rental property, but to find neighbors, a nominal amount, nothing crazy, but something that would kind of hype up enforcement and let them know that we mean business. That may or may not be good. Maybe it goes
and informing of what our rules and regulations are, hopeful to get compliance. And for context, anyone in terms of screening, when a wooden like fence or panel have screening of dumpsters at restaurants or other retails, but it can be a bush or a natural. Crap, I need to go screen my do it. So
some IE around that.
Natural or unnatural screening.
Yeah. Green though.
The ordinances for businesses dumpsters, don't those have to be screened?
Yes.
If they're street facing, there has to be so much of them covered.
Okay.
Yeah, there's language. There's a lot of them that are not screened
Yeah.
throughout the city.
That's
Yeah, we probably could go in there and start enforcing
with
that a
this.
little bit.
Uh-huh.
do we need city dumpsters that aren't
Over
You're
by
just
the
saying
line.
that we have city dumpsters that aren't properly screened, so I hadn't followed up to get more detail yet. But
Yeah, when we did
just wanted
that,
to share that.
when we did that sand thing for Burrow and Sprigg, we dragged our dumpsters out to the alley, and they weren't. Go back. They're going to go back where they came from. We just haven't moved them back there yet, so they'll be nice and screened.
We follow the rules that we want everyone else to
Right.
follow. Yeah.
Exactly.
Three fire truck purchases. We have a chief and a deputy chief. Or evening.
Mayor and commissioners, I have a little laryngitis today, so I brought my backup with me to get into the nitty-gritty part of this. But obviously, we all remember last September when we had some trucks that had failed. We were having difficulty getting parts, so on and so forth. One of the trucks we're replacing is what we call L41. That's the biggest truck we have for the ladder. We have spent over $100,000 in repairs in that vehicle, so it kind of tells you where that truck's going. That truck will be replaced by the new one first, and then that truck will be put up for sale and dismissed from our fleet completely. The other one is what we call an engine pumper. Currently, we have 23. That's at our central station. That one is, well, both these trucks are 2006s. They're both going to be replaced, but the engine pumper I'm talking about is a 2006. So we're talking 16 years old. It's what we call our frontline engine. It runs all the calls out of central. The new engine pumper will take place of that vehicle, and then 23 will be dismissed and placed down what we call reserve status. And as you can see here, the total package of this is about $2 million, well, a little bit more than $2 million for both vehicles. We have saved $45,000 by purchasing two at one time. The $22,000 in additional savings will not be realized because we will not be using their loan package or their financial incentives. I've talked to Ken and I've talked to Frank. We can do better than that, so that will not be part of this package. If we get these trucks ordered now, like I said, L41, the new ladder truck, which will be 100 foot, will be here first. I'm not sure of the timeline on that, but I mean soon. It's built now. But the other truck will be over a year before we get our engine replaced. So that kind of gives you an idea of where we're going here. The fleet will be in much better shape when both these vehicles get here. But fire trucks, like all other vehicles, do break down. So we want to stay ahead of this and don't get ourselves back in the situation we were last September.
Deputy Director, any
Yeah.
Other than, the director made good points. The aerial's looking at, it's already built. It's a stock unit. So we'll probably get delivery if we were able to make the deal this week or goes through, through commission. Anywhere is 45 to 50 days. So it's relatively quick. It's in Wisconsin right now at the factory. All we have to do is go over there and point out what we want done onto it, especially, like cabinet spacing, sizing. We inspect the vehicle, make sure it's exactly what we want, and then
Private back?
sure.
Can I go with them?
It's a long, nasty.
ride the
it's,
ladder?
It's not a fun ride on those.
Hey, Commissioner Ramsey, you have your red pen up.
I do. I have. Ladder truck is brand new. I just heard you talk about the excitement of it.
Yes.
The water pump, new to us.
Yes,
Or
it would be built to order.
new to us.
Yes. Yes. Oh yeah. 20 years on both.
Grant. Are these items in our budget?
No, they're not. We.
Come on. Currently, they're not in our budget. We were thinking about maybe getting loans through Team Financial to get some of the money. We went through them to do some of the HVAC at the arena before, and we paid them off through the capital improvements. So we kind of made a promise to them if we even do some financing, we'll go through them, but it's not in our budget. Where we have to work out the financing and figure out where the funds are going to come from. Have not got to that step yet.
So,
Okay, so we still have to figure out where the money's coming from. And if we're going to borrow, I think right now we're looking to borrow. Okay.
I didn't want to ask Mr. Grant this because I don't know if he was ready to answer it. But where do we think these funds are going to come from to pay back this $2 and a little bit $1 million loan?
Yeah, so 15 years, we'd probably do a 10-year loan or a 15-year public improvement fund or right in the fire department budget. Years. It's not a,
Oh, yeah, no. I just wanted to know that there was. Got it pretty much worked out. I think it's great that you guys. And when that happens, I want to hear the positive narrative of the fact that we are ready as we move into a season has an increased need for service that we're ready.
one thing, Mayor, I want to add real quick is on L41, that's the ladder truck we have right now. This is a critical situation. We have been underneath it. We've looked at it. The truck is borrow time. It's important that we switch that out first. We want to keep it dependable. It'll take a lot of money to do that. We feel right now it is in decent shape. We will able to get to our time when we receive the new one and be able to sell it and get it on. It's important to us to get it here while it's still in running condition.
Very good. Commissioner Emery, anything?
What will
We would keep engine 23 as a backup, and then ladder 41 we would sell.
Commissioner, remember last year, it's very important when a frontline engine goes down, we have a reserve. Last year when that happened, we had no reserve. We had to borrow a truck to reserve it. So we will still have the Saginaw we have now that has serviced us well, but that's the only reserve. So that will be our second reserve, and 23 now will become our first reserve. We'll be in much better shape because the trucks do have to go out for service and almost monthly.
Johnson?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. And Thank you, Chief and Deputy, for your work, and the other folks that have been the equipment and apparatus team for these tasks for our fire department timeline. So I'm getting to budget for one of them a couple years ago. So glad we're bringing it back and getting it done right now. You mentioned that, because in here it says we're going to use both of them, keep both of them as backup, but we're no longer going to use L41 as a backup. Do we have a ladder truck that is a reserve, or do we typically have a ladder truck as a reserve? And it would be sensible to have a ladder truck as a reserve.
I think keeping our truck would be problematic. It wouldn't be beneficial to us. I think in the long run, you're going to want to separate from that truck. So, probably sooner than later.
Okay. With the brand new ladder truck, we shouldn't have any problems with it, but in the event we do, we can lean into our mutual aid and get a ladder truck from our neighbor, the Heights Fire Department.
They have the closest 100 foot. Yeah, they're the only other one in the county that has a 100 footer. There's only 4 other units in the county. So.
Okay. And
Those are all 75. Yeah, this one would be a 100 foot.
100 foot as well. Mm-hmm. Okay, which would get us to the
tallest
building in the city, or soon to be, hopefully. That one's going to add a couple floors maybe, and then that would be 10 stories tall if it happens. Fingers crossed. Yeah. But excellent. In terms of the financing, the thought is to borrow it and pay over a number of years. Have we given consideration to using our ARPA dollars and just funding it outright, and not have any interest and save money that way, not have any financing costs, and just buy this outright and be done with the purchase?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a possibility. The reality is that'll mean something will go, right? Something that we think is important in the ARPA list will disappear. You know, $2 million worth, whatever that is, 10% of the ARPA money will disappear. So, you know, I think the sensible thing to do is to finance some or all of it, because interest rates are low enough, and we see the demand is high enough for those ARPA dollars. It seems like I get a new request from a different nonprofit every couple days. So the more of those we approve and the more things like this we add on there, the other things that maybe were important to us, whether it's Parks and Rec, they will take up, you know, they will end up, you know, they'll be diminished. So it's just something to think about. The likelihood that we would, you know, borrow to do those other things is probably pretty slim, but the idea that we would borrow to make a fixed long-term improvement like this is probably not outrageous. And, you know, we could do it over a shorter term if we think the interest is, you know, is too much, but interests are pretty historically low right now. My guess is we'll be somewhere between 2.5% and 3%, maybe even a little bit lower than that. So it's probably really reasonable that we borrow. Now we could, like Jeff said, front the money and then make the borrow a year from now or something like that, you know, and save a little bit of interest and save $22,000, especially if some of that ARPA money was going to sit anyway, you know, while we waited to spend it, you know, and so that's probably an option. But I'd like us to tie it up, to not tie up the ARPA money quite as, you know, not to have such a big piece of the ARPA money for something that we can really afford to provide, you know, right now.
So what was that you talked about, fronting it but then borrowing it? How did that?
Well, they offer us a $22,000 discount to give them the $2 million up front.
That's what you're talking
I didn't really think that it was. I didn't think it was worth it, especially if we had to borrow the $2 million, because the interest we would pay over that 1 year build out for the one would dwarf the $22,000 savings, and we wouldn't have the truck. So that's why I thought we would wait. We'd finance it for 5 or 10 years, but we don't have to make that first payment until we, you know, receive the truck and pay for them and receive the truck.
So will we be paying for both trucks at the same time and we receive the ladder truck in 45 to 50-ish days or so?
My guess would be if we didn't pay up front, they'd make us pay for the ladder truck when it was ready, and then they'd make us pay for the other truck when it was ready.
But we're going to pay for both at the same time to get some cost savings.
That wasn't my recommendation to Jeff.
We have a little fear of paying for that truck up front. Everything's so far behind right now. If we pay for that truck up front, what lever do we have to get that truck if it gets delayed or never shows up, whatever? If we offer to pay for it when it arrives, I think they're gonna want to get that truck to us so they can get their money. I mean, that's just my opinion.
So we're basically entering into a purchase order. We will pay for we'll pay for the ladder truck when it arrives, and we'll pay for the engine when it arrives next year. So we may be potentially, hypothetically, could use some ARPA funds for the first purchase and finance the rest next year, or vice versa, or do it all one or way or the other. Okay. Gotcha. Are there any other major equipment that is needed or foreseeable, needed in the foreseeable future for our fire department?
Last year we sold our airboat, and we're looking for another, some other item to replace that to do ice water rescues. So we're in the process of looking to see what's out there, looking at different options. Also with, some added equipment to the aerial that we didn't put into this purchase price because we didn't want to do that at this time. It was kind of advised against by the manufacturer. And so yeah, definitely, because that truck has a little bit more needs than our original truck.
Okay.
But really, that's probably, then, down the road, we're going to actually need another pumper. So probably another 3 or 4 years.
Okay. For the next one. Okay. Thank you.
Commissioner Ramsey?
Yeah. Oh, excuse me. Did we say a savings of $22,000 or 22%?
$22,000.
Oh, no.
Yeah. Push off.
I guess we could offer them $100,000 savings if we're
Okay.
and see how they take it. But when we were really worried with all the labor shortages and things like that, that there's a chance we pay them up front and they're supposed to deliver it in 14 months and it ends up being 18 months or 19 months or 20 months. And if that's the case and we haven't actually paid them yet, then they might move us higher up in the line to get the, to get essentially get paid from us. But if they're sitting on our cash, it's really hard to make a move any faster with it.
Okay. All right. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Item number 4,
All right. So this is my item right here.
ARP funding, housing.
So I guess this is the first ask to start spending some stimulus dollars. If you remember from my presentation, the thought was, these are dollars that we would spend now, but they would come back to us and be recycled back into the program to get spent on a permanent need, a year from now or 6 months from now or whenever we're done with this particular item. Especially knowing that housing is one of the biggest needs really right now in all of West Michigan, but in Muskegon in particular. So what we're proposing here is that we make the commitment, at least to ourselves, to allocate $5 million towards that and allow staff to issue this request for qualifications to essentially find interested and qualified developers to build some of these houses each. So we don't know what that's going to look like. That's why we're asking them for their qualifications so we can sit down with them and talk. But the idea is that we would build some quality housing in our core neighborhoods on presumably existing city-owned vacant lots, but I did leave some language in here that kind of, gives people the opportunity if they own a vacant lot that we don't know about or haven't considered or have access to it or think there's a better idea to acquire it, that we would at least consider those because those are still vacant spaces in our city that we'd like to see filled, and they might have something that's better and more appropriately located for what they want to do. But the idea here is that we would try to encourage that half of them go to people at that 120 to 100. I think I use 125% in here, but below 125%. So mostly in that 120 and below category. And there are a couple things in here that are different than the pilot program. One, the pilot program was about rentals, and this is going to be more focused on homes that would be sold. But also I added some language in here with some more higher minimum standards. Just because I think if we're pulling the purse strings on these, that we should be able to make some more demands out of there. So I want to make sure that these have basements. Not that every house has to have a basement, but Dave just built 25 of them without basements. So I think we should make sure that we're balancing that. The one garage stall, attached or detached, 2 stories of living space, 1 or more entry with a 0-step, 32-inch doors on the main floor, including the entry doors, 1 main floor restroom, 1 main floor bedroom. So require that all of these that we build have those. And it doesn't mean that they meet like ADA standards, but these will then begin to meet the visitability and the livability standards that we had kind of promised that we would try to meet with all of our housing. And I also really, I want to make sure that we're getting, 30-year architectural shingles before we turn these over, especially if we turn them to an income qualified homeowner. We want to give them something that they don't have to put a lot of money into in 10 years, and then, something that's a little bit nicer than just, stock vinyl siding. As we've seen some of the houses get remodeled or go up, you see the one on Isabella, when we get on Pine, Michelle Mikesell's home on Webster or Muskegon, those really start to look a little bit nicer with a little bit of upgrade from vinyl siding. Not that every house needs to be like that, but I'm really trying to set a higher standard with these ones right here. And then we're asking them to clear the lots of brush and fencing and overgrowth, but specifically not asking them to clear all the trees off of them. So presumably we'll try to make sure that they're siting houses on these lots that allow the more mature trees to stay, which wasn't necessarily a priority before, but we want to make sure it is. And then we want them to do some site improvements. We want them to make sure that there's a concrete driveway. We want to make sure that that the lawns are taken care of, that there's sprinkling available, and that there's a landscaped planting strip around the home, just so that there's not, just so that we set a good high standard that's easy for people to take care of. Those will add some cost onto the outside non-livable space, but a lot of these are being built on corner lots. That's where a big number of our vacant lots are old, formerly unbuildable corner lots. We just want to make sure that that we're setting people up to be successful. So I think that's really it. I think it pretty much speaks for itself. The proposed development agreement in here, I really took the one that we approved for Dave Duzendang and just move some things around to make it fit. I'm not asking the commission to approve signed development agreements now, but just to approve the form so that we can include it in the RFQ when we send it out, knowing that if we find 5 builders or 6 builders or 2 builders, they will come back individually for approval one at a time, with a development agreement that's been tailored a little bit more to fit, what we end up working out with that particular builder.
Commissioner Ramsey?
Yeah, Frank, this is great. I want to thank you for moving swiftly in the area of housing, because as we know, particularly right now in our community, there are a ton of dollars rolling around for housing assistance, and there's no housing stock to put it into. But I do have a question, and I'm not trying to yuck your yum or throw this all into it. But here we go. So, is there an opportunity for us to take the policy that the city already has for first-time buyer assistance and take some of this money, I'm not going to say a cool mill, but a cool mill, and look at how we update our first-time buyer assistance policy so that as our housing market moves into a new, I have terrible posture, so as our housing market moves into a new iteration, that our assistance dollars can as well, and maybe we raise the cap of the $5,000 benefit and the cap of the $80,000 purchase price. And I'm not going to tell you how to write this. I just think that there's an opportunity there, and it doesn't have to be $1 million.
Yeah. Here's a question, and maybe if Onita doesn't mind me putting her on the spot. My guess is that $80,000 threshold is set somewhere. Maybe it's other than us, or maybe it's not other than us. And maybe she can give me that information.
Right now, the HUD's list is out for this year, and it's $143,000 for home dollars.
So we could go to that. We could go up that high if we wanted to. So there's an opportunity for that. It sounds like up to 140. I don't know. That might touch some of these. If you notice in here, the language that I use is instead of reducing the price of the house for qualified people, we would increase the subsidy for down payment assistance.
Right. Yeah.
So on those, they would get quite a bit more.
Right. I just think that if we're gonna talk about pumping in $5 million, let's see if we can breathe some new life into one of our programs that we've had for a while, and may be able to benefit some people who are not going to move into one of these brand new houses. And again, I'm not going to tell you how to write it.
Got it.
I just know that I would like to see something, and I'm willing to sit down with you and have further conversation about what that looks like, because I have an entire list of things I could share, but I'd have to read it, and that's impersonal, and we don't want that. The agreement template I enjoy. I didn't see anything, and I just might have missed it, that talked about local builders, or there's an incentive for local constructors. Is that in here or is that not in here?
There is not anything in here for that, but that's something we could work out, assuming there's a local home builder, and
Right.
and what you mean by local, because I'm thinking of the home, county, there would be some in the county. I don't know of any many home builders that build lots of houses, located directly in the city.
Yeah.
But we might be able to get some local, some countywide types of,
I mean, I don't know. I just think that if there's any opportunity for us to, make those dollars circulate more quickly in our neighborhoods and communities to do that. But otherwise, I think that this is great and way to think. I mean, other than everything I told you I didn't like about it and that I want you to change, Frank, it's awesome.
I think those things are easy, and I think the thing you brought up about down payment assistance, that could be separate. That really could be separate from this. But the idea of using some of those ARP dollars to,
Right.
separately from this, to help people that are trying to get into existing homes.
Right, and because I know
make
that
them
the
more
ARP
affordable.
dollars aren't mandated the way that our HUD dollars are, we can play with those limits and those requirements so that we can. Because, I mean, let's be honest, how many brand new homes are we selling for 80 grand, eh? And if that's your dream, then great. But then how many not brand new homes are we selling for still way more than 80 grand in our neighborhoods? And if so, if we're creating this line of housing at every price point, as you move through and you continue to move up, those $80,000 homes are few and farther in between than they have been previously. And so we have to make them more accessible. And because we have these dollars that I don't want to take from other things, I'm not trying to take money away from anybody. I just think that there might be an opportunity for us to update this program so that it's more relevant now in our current housing market.
One question maybe, and maybe I'm overthinking it a little bit, is the idea that we would offer more down payment assistance for people that are buying more expensive homes than $80,000, but using these dollars that are very specifically meant for our community.
Mm-hmm.
Would you consider that maybe that higher amount would maybe be more so for Muskegon residents looking to move within the city, rather than anybody looking to move into the city? Or is that?
I think that there's a wonderful program
much?
there. What did they say? Keep it in the family. If someone is a resident of Muskegon and has been and is looking to move forward, as long as we have guidelines and requirements that are written in black and white, so that we can always refer back to them and lean on those and know that it comes from a place of city building and neighborhood and community development, I think that there's opportunity there. I mean, their taxes fund these programs.
I would just hate to offer more assistance for more expensive homes, and then almost purposefully it would result in only bringing in new residents.
We have enough right now that's recruiting new residents to our beautiful Lakeshore community. And so if there's anything we can do to help our current neighbors step up, I think that's a great opportunity. And kudos to you for pulling that out of nowhere just now. That's great. Spitballing is amazing sometimes.
Good. Commissioner Emery.
Yeah, $5 million just sounds like a whole lot of money to me for this, and I guess I'm not totally understanding it. But I wonder how many mortgage people are losing their homes because of COVID, because they couldn't pay their mortgages or couldn't pay their rent. Their landlords are now going to lose the rentals because they were unable to pay their mortgages because their renters weren't able to pay the rent. So should these monies be going towards those first? Those already existing residents in our city.
Yeah. I think that question maybe is up to you guys, because you're going to decide how to spend the money. I will tell you this: $5 million will build 23 to 25 houses. So so if you want to lower it, if you want to build 10 houses, maybe a couple $1 million. But it sounds like a lot of money just because it is a lot of money.
23 houses in total built with $5 million?
That would be my guess.
Or would that our $5 million is matching?
I would say, no, I'm saying $5 million by itself would build about that many.
Okay.
Now, the difference also would be that we would presume that we're going to sell these, right? So we would presume that If we sell them all to low mod families, we might recoup less of that money. If we sell half of them to market rate families, we might recoup more of that money. If we sell all of them to market rate families, we might recoup all of that money. So it wouldn't end up being, it's not I'm not proposing that we take $5 million, build it to houses, put it into houses, and then just hand those houses out and be out to $5 million. I would fully expect that we would recoup 4.7 million. A significant amount of this would come back, and then we would decide, did that work? Was it successful? Do we want to do this again, or do we now want to turn around and put it in a park? Or do we now want to turn around and put it in something that won't be kind of like recycling the money? Because the goal of doing this up front was some things we'll do, for example, building new playgrounds that will not turn around and give us back 50% of the money or 80% of the money, but this one will, unless for some reason we never sell a home.
So then we would be in the realty business and flipping houses or building houses and selling them.
Yeah, I mean, we would be in the community building business,
Yeah.
right? So I mean, the idea would be that we'd be building our community.
So for existing homeowners, like myself, when did, that are already, people who have lived in our community for 20 years, 30 years, but need help with a roof, with siding, that aren't eligible for her programs. Or are they? Do those programs already exist?
Now, what we're telling families that are over income for our program is that lenders are lending at low interest rates, and houses are valued at more than what they were 5 months ago. So it would be easy to secure a loan. But I know that that's just not happening. People hear the word, go to your lender and get a loan. It just seems mammoth for them. So I just don't know how we can help those who are that 80 to 120, because that's what we're finding. Talking to Deputy Chief, Fire Chief, he expressed some people from last year who had a fire, unable to get that house secured and livable again because they didn't have insurance. So yeah, I'm thinking in the back of my mind, what will this money be able to do for those who are over income, over the 80%? Because there's a ton of owners who are just in a fight. We just don't know where to set.
And if I can point out too, this is really just, this is $5 million, $27 million of ARP money, but this was very specifically peeled out of that ARP dollars to build new houses in our community that will benefit long-term. They'll benefit the first family that gets in there, but they'll benefit our community for 20, 30, 40, 50 years. And so the idea was to make this major investment, recoup as much of the money as possible, and then make long-term investments, which very well could benefit, the families that have lived here like yourself, whether it's, park improvements or all the other things that we've talked about wanting to do with this ARP money. But this piece is very specific for the idea of infilling those vacant lots, because as a staff, we see that as probably one of the biggest contributors to our neighborhoods dying are the vacant spaces in those neighborhoods. The trash that they bring, the weeds that they bring, the trouble that they bring, and then just the overall feeling of disinvestment in those neighborhoods. They're one of the biggest detractors, one of the biggest reasons why our neighborhoods or blocks within our neighborhoods begin to fall into disrepair. Because they're quickly forgotten about, they're quickly used as dump sites, they're quickly used as litter collectors. And for 30 plus years, whenever a new house had to be built, Muskegon and Muskegon Heights, but Muskegon, which is the one we care about right now, was not the top choice. It was very consistently Fruitport, Norton Shores, North Muskegon, Laketon, Muskegon Township. And so you say, why should we get in the real estate business? It's that very reason why. We can sit back and say, hey, we're not getting in the real estate business, and then everybody else will say, that's cool, man, we know we can build a house anywhere, but you can collect taxes and have economic impact in only one place, and that's within the city limits. And so if we want to get those people to make those investments here, it was like the argument I made about, about not being the best prom date when we were talking about, joining fire departments, we haven't been able to provide the best product forward, so that requires us to have to subsidize or partner or move the process forward differently than anybody, than any of the other suburban communities have to, unfortunately. But if we want to get to the next level, we absolutely have to do that. We absolutely need the new housing in here. Muskegon, 50 years ago had 20,000 more people living in almost than it does today.
Yeah.
So in order for Muskegon to be prosperous, it would have had to really maintain that number or grow it over this time, not lose 25% of the people or whatever the percentage was.
And losing housing stock, and losing neighborhood value, and losing state equalized value that we rely upon. And I think to give this another good shot, we have a great example of success of community building and value building. Beginning with our Midtown Square One, and the subsequent iterations, have looked at people on a more restricted economic level. But I think it's essential that we keep on with getting rid of the empty lots and strengthening our neighborhoods. Otherwise, there's not going to be anybody there to pick up the bill for the infrastructure. And this development, it pays more than our bills, from the property tax. We get the added benefit of something that we necessarily need, having been such an undervalued community for so many years. We get the additional benefit of perhaps the local income tax. But when it comes to the property tax, we're not the only beneficiary when we have successful development in town. Because look at the other agencies, institutions, and organizations that we rely upon, and our children rely upon, whether it's Muskegon Public Schools or Hackley Library.
Or the Veterans Village, which does help do a lot of things, like you brought up with home repairs and things like that.
Right.
For seniors, I'm sorry, not veterans.
Right. County programming, because the lion's share of the property tax goes to these other agencies that provide essential services throughout the community. Our schools, the intermediate school district, community college, and their operations. And any of us that may be beneficiary of any of the county services. So it's not just us. But in my mind, the biggest could be MTS. Supporting them. So when we're successful and our value and our worth growing, that helps everybody. We're about what, 20% we take from the property tax, maybe a little bit more, but the remainder, is the school district, the library, Lakeshore Community Center, county programming that is necessary. Through the millages that have been passed there for either seniors. This is where the money comes.
Okay, can anybody answer my question? Maybe Anita, you can do that. About the people who need help with mortgages that have been affected by the pandemic, rent.
I think Mr. Ramsey.
Yes.
Hi. I don't know if we've ever met, but my name is Michael Ramsey. I'm the Director of Homeless Services at Community Encompass.
How do you do?
Nice to meet you, Commissioner Emmer. Thank you for having me today. Actually, no. So, Teresa, you have a very great point that mortgage assistance within our community is few and far between. We do have a program that we can help for up to 1 month of mortgage, no questions asked. We only pay the actual principal and interest, no escrow, no insurance, none of that. And that's the only program that we have at Encompass for mortgage. Now, rental assistance, I've got $15 million that I've got until December 22nd to spend, or December of 22 to spend. So we're covered in rental arrearages, but the mortgage is where there is opportunity. And while we do understand that for us, this is only the first deployment of those funds that are coming from the federal government, not from the state, to help our neighbors in crisis. There may be a more enhanced and expanded opportunity for mortgages on the second go-around, but nothing is written in stone. So for you to really look at that and to question it is wonderful. Because I think that if there's an opportunity for us to help as a community, I would support that. It is the one place where we fall short.
But
And it's, you know, as we talk about being able to lend a hand and to support, especially people who have lived here for 25 years, who have been a part of this community and have helped to build roads indirectly and sometimes directly. Eh? That's why local workers are important. We have to be able to step up to the plate and help them now as well. And we've had a lot of our local businesses from our larger corporations like Howmet, Alcoa, whatever they're going by now, and Mercy Health Muskegon that have been affected by this. And if those are two of our largest employers in town, what are we doing? And so there's definitely opportunity. And if you would like to have any other conversations about this and like the ins and outs of stuff, I can share with you all that, especially specifically around that EFSP mortgage program, which is what it's called. But it is limited, and it's 1 month. So, but great job thinking about that. A lot of people don't.
Yeah, I just, because 5 million sounds like it's a whole lot. It's, how much are we getting in total? For our
22 or
so it's
so.
almost a quarter of what we're getting.
So the way that this is designed, you know, preferably what we would see is we would, like, with all the developers together, we would be committing 5 million, they would be committing 5 million. We would build together, and then our dollars only get returned less than 5 million if for some reason we have to subsidize a home to put it in the hands of an income qualified person that otherwise can't afford it. So the thought is, you know, I said it would make 23 to 25 houses to 5 million. Presumably their 5 million would also make 23 to 25 million. So 23 to 25 houses. So somewhere between 45 and 50 homes would be built with this. And then we would stand to lose somewhere between $0 and $5 million, probably something more like $100,000 or $200,000 or $300,000, depending on how many income qualified buyers we end up helping and where they're at. So my my presumption would be we would ask people to go out and get a mortgage that get a pre-qualification for a mortgage that a lender will qualify them for. So if I'm an income qualified person, I'm below 120%, I qualify. I come to this home to purchase, I'm qualified at $172,000. The home costs us $200,000 to build. That's when we would turn around and sell them the house for $172,000 or equivalent there too. Once we've agreed that that's okay to take that kind of loss. Presumably, the people that are market rate will have a mortgage for the full, you know, for the full amount.
Mm-hmm. So I also just to add, it seems to prioritize the infill housing above anything else on our wish list.
No, because at the end of the day, it might only be spending $250,000 on infill housing. Remember, this is the one that that can get recycled, so it seems prioritized because it's a lot of money. But it's really, if we wanted to go out and borrow this money to do this with them, it'd only take $250,000 from ARPA money if we needed it. We could do it that way. It's kind of similar like we were talking about with the fire truck. But really, this is about spending the money now while we figure out what to do with the other stuff, because we know the vast majority of this will come back to us when we sell them, and then have a longer term impact. So, you know, it's not going to be $5 million. It's $5 million is a placeholder, you know, the initial expense of that. But the expectation that we don't sell a single house or recoup a single dollar is pretty, you know, it's pretty low. So the idea is that we'll recoup that probably not the full, because the goal here is to help, you know, low moderate income families also own a home. So we don't recoup it all, but we manage how much we're willing to permanently invest. You know, when we see the buyers and their qualifications, and you know, and what they can afford. So no, it's not prioritized, but I mean, although people that took the survey probably live in homes already, so they're not homeless and they're not necessarily all looking for houses. We know this: there are people that are absolutely looking for homes, whether they're Muskegon, North Shores, you know, or anywhere in West Michigan, and they're just not finding them. And everybody's dealing with the same problem. The only difference is last time there was a home push, they were building them everywhere, but still not building them here. You know,
Yeah, it is a nationwide issue.
But cities like ours are always the last to see it unless we're using creative programming or unless MISHDA or federal programming or whatnot, is willing to, partner. Commissioner.
It's the last thing I'm going to say, Frank. Is there an opportunity to take the dollars that we may either generate as revenue or that we're saving from this $5 million? Now hear me out, because I don't know if I'm going to say it correctly. And use that as seed money so that we never have to have this much money come out of one specific fund or one specific, because this is a once in a lifetime thing. So if there's going to be income generated or we get this money back and we know that we've already earmarked it for this program, how do we take whatever comes back to us and use that to create to create a seed fund or something that will continue to fund projects like this moving forward so that we always have the money in a line item. I don't know what else to call it. Money people, that's the two of you. So that moving forward, that you can come and say, hey guys, I want to take $250 out of the line item or whatever that, a bucket of money to put towards this next project that I have out in the Sherman corridor. Like, how do we tweak that so that this is a thing that we can use going forward to always address the housing crisis that will be in place for the next 10 to 15 years? Let's not pretend.
So I would like to prove that we're always a step ahead of you, Joe. But, so if you remember, we created this brownfield infill housing program over a year ago, and that's what Dave's building the first round of houses on. Presumably, the expectations, these will go in there. That's recouping, that brownfield is taking taxes that were collected on these houses that are built, and one, they're paying us back. But in every single one of those, we have language in there that says, for 5 years after we're paid back, we can collect those taxes and put them in a revolving loan fund to fund related expenses. So depending on how successful we are, which is why we want to build a lot of houses now, if 50 houses are paying into it, it's one thing. If 700 houses are paying into it, it's a whole nother, it's a whole nother ballgame. But the presumption is the way that state law allows us, and we've never gotten there. Every one of our brownfields has this. It says at the end of the term, we want 5 years of tax capture to go to our brownfield revolving loan fund. We've never actually gotten to the point of that yet because our valuations have been historically low. By the time eligible expenses are paid, there's no money left. The brownfield's expired and there's no money left. In the infill housing program, that will be the case. Because these will collect for 5 years, 7 years, 10 years, and then they'll start putting into our revolving loan fund. And Jake raises his hand, so I'll let him comment too.
Yep.
But that is going to be the mechanism. It will be there.
Yeah, the only other thing I was going to add, because this is something that the team and Frank has given a ton of thought. So I like it because it creates opportunity with this new liquidity that we've got that, as was mentioned, is generational, to make sure that we provide a certain percentage of new housing starts for low to mod families. And yeah, we're taking, so we sell those below construction costs presumably, and we take a loss, but we're about the only developer that can do that and still make money, because if we build 50 new homes, 25 from us, 25 from the developers that match, by my math, the general operating millage that we'll generate from those every single year is somewhere between $65,000 and $85,000. So say we lose 300 grand from that 5, we get 4.7 back. We're pumping all that back into the brownfield fund, which is eventually paying us back for those losses. And so it's really not a loss. It just means that we're making a targeted investment with a certain amount of time to eclipse a break even. And so even the stuff that we lose in those sales, we're not really losing because of the brownfield and because we collect general property taxes anyway.
So put that in words that we can understand, Frank, and I support it.
It's a long game. You already approved it. When you guys approved the infill housing program, the brownfield portion of it, a little over a year ago, you approved it. Everything that you want to do is sitting there. It just needs to, houses need to be built, sold, and people need to pay their property taxes, and then the system will start working. And it will start working come January 1st, because there will be our 16 homes will all have taxpayers in them that we built. Those are all in it.
Yeah.
And then the 25 homes that Dave Dusingdang built will all be paying taxes and have it in there. And there's a chance that one or both of the Rudy Briggs homes will be doing the same thing. So there's a chance that there's already somewhere 52 to 55 homes that will be paying property taxes into that program, as soon as you know, really they won't pay until next July, but next calendar year they'll be paying taxes.
Right, and then moving forward, we can take those dollars and reinvest them into the same sort of project, and it doesn't have to come from a general fund or from an influx of $24 million that we're never going to see again, but we will have the money to run these sort of programs as a city that contain themselves.
They'll be able to pay for brownfield eligible expenses,
And then,
of which the subsidization is.
Or is that in trouble? Yeah, no, I support that. It's awesome. Thank you, Frank.
Commissioner Johnson.
Thank you, sir. And thank you, Mr. Ramsey, for asking that question. That was one that was just wondering about myself.
I mean, it just makes sense, right? Like, why not take the opportunity to, if this works for us, and while we're not in the business of real estate,
Yeah,
push it
absolutely.
forward.
That was the original impetus or part of the program for the Midtown 9 that we were going to fund, build, and the proceeds from which we were going to reinvest in building more houses. There's some needs that pulled that funding elsewhere, so we had to finance the next, 12, 16? 16 that we did with other monies. But yeah, for almost 7 years now, I guess it was when Midtown 9 first came about, is we were envisioning a program like this. And so staff was able to creatively come up with this brownfield home infill program. And the state has given us some additional leeway with the units closest to downtown. I think we can capture.
Yeah, that's got to get finalized
That's still
by
in-
strategic fund, but that's the expectation.
Okay.
They'll get more capture.
And that will be the capture of, what's the radius around downtown, do you know approximately?
Well, they'll let us do a 15-minute walk, right? It was a
15-minute
walk.
walk from downtown. So
From
all
the
the
DDA.
other units that are put in our brownfield home infill program, which sounds like all of these we anticipate putting in the brownfield home infill, all the ones outside of that 15-minute walk radius, we will only be local only capture. So their schools, our libraries, our
Not schools.
veterans will continue to benefit. Like they will see our local capture will go into the brownfield home infill, but when it's outside of that radius, that will accrue to the school system, the libraries, the veterans millage and all that.
No,
the
well,
rest.
yes, what you're saying, except a couple of them that you mentioned are considered local. The library is local, the veterans and the seniors are local.
Oh.
The county, so it's the county millages, the veterans, the seniors, the city, anything that's not like a debt millage, and anything that's not school related.
The
We'll be able
schools
to
are
capture.
held harmless, debt is held harmless, everything else is captured. Is there a way to adjust that? Because for instance, if we are building a lot of houses and bringing more people in, I mean, although I love the idea of providing a little bit more greater subsidy for our current residents buying one of these, staying within our magnificent city. But is there a way to, because if we're bringing in more people and our population is growing, we're going to be taxing, Hackley Public Library or the museum more. And so is there a way to, when I say taxing, I mean there's more people using those facilities and those services. And if they're not benefiting from the property tax capture from those new people who are now using them, that could
two
be
things.
somewhat of a disconnect or harm for them. Although it will sort itself out in I guess 7 to 10 years or so.
It's more than that too, because you gotta remember, when we do these in a particular neighborhood, we saw the ramifications around Midtown Square. Everybody else's values went up as they sold their homes too. So yeah, they would be foregoing on our homes that we actually build, which they were collecting nothing on, right? Because they're all vacant, publicly owned properties. But like the houses on either side of it, the houses across the street, those presumably will see improvement too. And I bet what we'll find is if we go back and look at it, they will continue to rise at an above average rate from their tax collections than if we hadn't done this at all, just because of the idea of lifting up the entire neighborhood. But I would say this, if we said, hey, we want to pass through money to the library or the veterans, we would have to do that on a prorated basis. So we could say, we want to pass through $500,000 or whatever it is, it would get split up amongst all those people that we took from. So the county would get theirs, our general fund would get ours, and all those places would get them. So we'd have to be careful. We wouldn't be able to pick and choose who we pass through to. So if we want to pass through money, it would get spread out evenly based on what their millage rate is as a percentage of what we captured. And it would be like that with the same thing with the DDA. One thing that I would say to point out about the library, they opted out of the DDA. So our biggest tax capture opportunity, they're not getting captured in, they're not participating in. So they already have opted out of the largest and most impactful one that we have.
Can I take
That's
that
good
point there?
context.
This this helps raise the value of everything surrounding,
Everything.
and which mitigates that period of time where we're not passing through to those particular agencies and stabilizing everyone. You know, the Commissioner Ramsey, you said, you know, we're not in the real estate business. Yeah, cities are. Cities are somewhat in the real estate business, and the ones I've visited, whether it's Berkeley, California, or Cincinnati, Ohio, you know, I've done programs comparable to this, putting in entire new neighborhoods with, you know, creative design such as this. Because for too long, we just haven't been desirable for the private sector. And a lot of us still aren't at that point. Even Grand Rapids and a number of their neighborhoods are using, you know, creative designs such as this. Holland as well, because we're just not perceptually in the private sector's mind and the lender's mind and the developer's mind at that part of the cusp where people are willing to come on in and just. And the fact of the matter is that the private sector often waits for the fact that there are, you know, creative state programs, whether it's from, you know, MEDC or the Strategic Fund or MISTA and everything else, and so they're going to use them for as long as they possibly can. And we're just not at that point yet, like many American cities such as us, where you can do these type of things without, you can't do these type of things without these type of creative, you know, endeavors. So cities throughout the United States certainly have been in the so-called real estate business, but I think that's not a good term. Community building is, you know, the best term. Neighborhood development and stabilization and enhancement are better terms, because that's exactly, you know, what it is. Because, you know, North Nelson, Jackson Hill, sections of Marquette, Angel, they're not the neighborhoods perhaps we remember when there was a house on every lot and, you know, people visiting over the side fences, you know, every day. So I think an initiative such as this is well placed and will serve us well, you know, in the decades to come. We started the program with Midtown. We've seen the benefits in the immediate neighborhood and adjacent neighborhoods as far as, you know, rising property values and just attitudes of the neighbors, you know, fixing up their own places, putting up new roofs. Landlords enhancing, you know, their product, because now there's, you know, desirable, safe competition. So I'm very supportive of this. Commissioner Ramsey.
Yep, I'm going to give you that one. But I do want to shine a light on the narratives and the nomenclature that we're using when we speak about the work that we do in real estate, air quotes, because for our neighbors who don't understand what that means, it could be confusing. And like Commissioner Emery pointed out, how it looked like we were prioritizing an infill project with these dollars, and when the city manager was able to so eloquently help us to better understand what it was going to look like as an end product, that's something that people will be able to digest. So as we move forward with these wonderful ideas, we need to make sure that the narrative we're sharing is digestible and understandable. And I think that when we speak to community development and building of said communities as a city, that is our job, and that is great. But I think it's all on how we share that information with our neighbors so that they're a part of the journey with us, and that they're not confused and or then frustrated because they don't understand it.
Right.
So that's my red pin down.
Oh no, you're welcome to keep it up all night.
Two quick things too to maybe help wrap this up. One, we do hear, and one of the reasons why infill housing is so important to me is we do hear, not just in our city, but it seems like city after city, and I read an article about it where like everybody, like a lot of the assumption residents always is, because they see it, you're investing in the downtown and not the neighborhoods. This is a good example to show that that even when you invest in neighborhoods, it can be tricky to do, because it's clear we're investing in vacant lots that used to have houses on them that desperately need houses on them. And I think that that's part of the narrative is, no, this is what it looks like when you say you're not investing in my neighborhood. This is an idea of what it would look like to reinvest in neighborhoods. But another thing is, the governor announced that there is going to be $100 million invested in affordable housing, through their programming. Yes. And so that's another whole piece of this. That's why it's important that we continue our momentum with our infill housing, because the likelihood is that program is going to look very similar to the kind of program that they've been having, which is places like the Berkshire, places like 1021. Those are going to have to go in places like urban communities like Muskegon that meet walk scores, that meet certain demographic things that they expect them to meet. So we can't expect of that $100 million, one project or two projects or three projects will come to the Muskegon area. And if they come to the Muskegon area, the likelihood that they go to Northern Shores or North Muskegon or any place else aside from Muskegon or Muskegon Heights is probably small. So there is going to be more affordable options coming here. The question is, how do we convince the state to do those in townhouses and do those in duplexes and do those in single family houses to some extent, and not only in 3-story apartment buildings and stuff like that. And I know it gets to affordability and taking care of the land and stuff like that that are hindrances to some people to own a single family home. But we know that there will be $100 million invested, and we know based on just the type of projects that the state's already awarded to us in recent years with the 3 LIHTC projects that are under construction right now or recently completed, that they will continue to invest those in Muskegon, because we've demonstrated a need and demonstrated capacity for those. So that's all. I'll ask you.
So on that note, the $100 million, do we know how that may intersect, or that remains to be seen, the contours, whether it'll be more LIHTC credits, or it might be, like you said, hopefully,
I hope it'll be
your duplexes.
I hope it'll be a little bit of both of those things. My guess is the state's not as innovative as local government, and it's really easy to. You came from the state, right, Pete? You know that. They're not as innovative as us, and it's a lot of money. It's a lot easier for them to manage. Remember, I told you that, man, it'd be a lot easier if you help me only get 2 developers here instead of 7, right? It's going to be a lot easier for them to have 20 projects instead of 250 scattered site projects like in a county. So, and so it remains to be seen. We continue to tell MSHDA, we continue to tell MEDC that we need more smaller scale affordable units. And if it turns out that they give dollars to places like Muskegon to do these programs to help with our infill program, like for example, if we could get awarded $1 million or $2 million to make our infill housing more affordable or more successful, then I would take that over another LIHTC deal probably 10 out of 10 times. But at the same time, one LIHTC deal like 1021 will give 70 families homes. I mean, that's pretty impactful when we're trying to get a lot of people in houses.
Safe, clean.
Yeah, and it's in a great location. I mean, it's very walkable to downtown. Anyway, it's not out in the middle of a farmland someplace where the people won't have access to any resources. They'll have access to anything that they need, and with the new microtransit, they'll have access to get anywhere at any point that they need to.
So, yeah, I like the overall program in terms of tie-in with our existing home infill housing and using this fund to public resources to leverage private dollars to expand the number of housing units that we're bringing online into our city. And I really like the inclusion of 0-step and 32-inch doors to make, and the main floor, bedroom, bathrooms, ensuring that we have that visibility at least, potentially, more accessibility, whether you are mobility challenged for whatever reason. Having a bedroom on the first floor and a bathroom on the first floor is really important. So I'm glad that we are being mindful of that in terms of minimums. I do wonder, though, in terms of committing $5 million right off the jump, because we've received $11 million thus far. We'll get another $11 million next year is what we expect. So $5 million off the jump is almost half of what we have. Would it be prudent to commit half, $2.5 million right now, go through the RFQ, interdevelopment agreements with them, see how it works out, give us an opportunity to tweak it if we see where it could be improved, and reissue that call to developers, say, maybe this time next year or after the next $11 million has come in the spring, May, and re-up, so to speak, with another 2.5 million, or however much we feel is prudent or appropriate at that time, rather than committing all 5 million right now, and because that part of this development agreement is you need to build right now ASAP. And while I understand the need for as much housing as possible given the housing crisis, we also are butting up against the supply chain dynamics and disruptions there, and the cost of construction has skyrocketed. And so by flooding it with building, you might not get as much bang for a buck doing it all at once, whereas we spread it out a little bit longer. So those are the two things that I'm thinking of in terms of potentially staggering it. Is one, we're not overcommitting funds on hand right off the jump. Potentially getting more units altogether by staggering it, and then opportunity to tweak and improve.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's an option to do a little, to do a little bit less. Just understanding that the impact will be less, and the spend down period will be longer. So if we wanted to be able to recycle the full $5 million as soon as possible, we recycle $2.5 million now, and then another $2.5 million a year from now. That will delay something, right? Because we would presumably have recycled $5 million in, $5 million back, or $4.5 million, whatever the number is, back by this time next year, rather than just now deploying half of it at that point. So we would, if we were wanting to spend some of those other dollars, we might just have to reevaluate when we can. Does that make sense? It wouldn't come. The presumption would be we will have replenished all that we were going to replenish out of that $5 million within the next year. Mm-hmm. Following your model, we'll have replenished the first $2.5 million, but we'll be just deploying the second $2.5 million. So it'll just be a little bit longer before that becomes available to make a permanent investment with. But again, the problem with the cost of housing is $2.5 million. It's not going to have. It won't be as impactful. It might almost be, Dave's building faster than that by himself right now. So I mean, we wouldn't, presuming he keeps going with his next phase soon, he'll be in front of us asking to move on with the next phase. Presuming he moves on with his next phase, well, the owner-occupied homes will be getting, built quite a bit slower than the renter-occupied homes that he's building, including as he's picking up the lots that maybe might be more preferred for home buyers as well.
How are we going to be determining where these get built, so that we are mindful of this investment happening in several different neighborhoods across our city and not concentrated just in one or two, but spreading the benefit and impact of these investments?
So, I think it'd be between staff and whichever developers we try to use. The goal is to try to pick out houses that are going to be reasonably marketable. So some neighborhoods we know that we're not quite ready to go put one house by itself in. So we're going to have to figure out, if it's 10 houses, we're probably going to want to find a spot where we can put, if we're going to break into two neighborhoods, we want to be able to put 5 near each other and 5 near each other, or something where they can be impactful to one another and, and assist one another in terms of the homeowner being able to get a mortgage and, be, what's the right word, have a comparable, a number of comparable homes. I think that's been one of the problems with our long-term, the way that we try to get, even with our CNS money, do one of this neighborhood and do one of this neighborhood and spread it out. You spread it out too far, it ends up being hard to be impactful and sustainable, in the long run. So what I would prefer to do is, if we think that if the implication is, hey, we're doing them all in Nelson, we need to move out of Nelson, I would say let's pick a different neighborhood. If it's Jackson Hill, if it's Marquette, if it's Angel, if it's Steele, if it's you name the neighborhood, and let's try to put them all close together in a desirable area, in that neighborhood, and start to build that neighborhood up, rather than say let's put a couple in each neighborhood. It'll be more expensive for the builders to keep track of them. it'll be more expensive for them, to maintain them, mow lawns and stuff while they're building. It'll be a lot easier if they're within, if they're easily, within one another and have one. And I think Jake's raised his hand for something.
Yeah, just to kind of give context to the original question about potentially scaling back, one of the things I think this item and this initiative tries to speak to is some of those folks that Commissioner Emery mentioned, those Alice families that are, they're making just a little bit too much for some of the programming available. All the housing data for Muskegon County speaks to this nationwide shortage. We're not exempt from that. To put it in context, the numbers that I remember offhand are May. So May of 2020 had near record low inventory in Muskegon County. Countywide, 422 homes for sale, single family homes. May of 2021 had 189 single family homes for sale. And so what's happening is, if you look at the price to price, year to year, final sale price, then time on market's going down. Average price of sale is up over $45,000. So that means those Alice families are getting left out in the cold. Working families are getting left out in the cold because they can't keep up with the bidding wars that are going on. They can't afford to pay sellers, realty commissions, things like that. So while we definitely can, take a more conservative approach and scale that number, that 5 million, 2.5 million, whatever the commission's comfortable with, the market is there, and we would be, for lack of a better term, artificially creating a market to keep a certain percentage of these very affordable. And that's something that the community definitely needs. We have an offer coming in that we're considering on one of the Jackson Hill homes that Rudy Briggs has done, and it's, it's an offer that would have been unheard of in Jackson Hill 5 years from now, and it's still $30,000 under the construction cost. So, and if this were a market rate home, like one that, a private builder built, I would have gotten 5 of those offers, and I would have just let them play off each other until it got up to some astronomical number that one person gets the home. So my point is, the market is there. We could do 10 million, and we would be finding buyers. So the market is there to do what we can accommodate from a context standpoint.
Yeah, without a doubt. It's at one point the number of units on market were just over 100. It was like 108
Yep,
one
at the
month.
onset
It
spring.
was ridiculous for a county of 170, 180,000 people. Without a doubt, we have a hot housing market. There's considerable demand.
It's hurting people. That's the problem.
It's hurting people. Is there unintended consequences of us flooding the market with trying to build so much and taking up supply and labor that would then further inflate the cost of housing construction locally and having unintended consequences in that regard versus trying to stagger it a bit to lessen that unintended harm while with the intention of being able to get better pricing for construction costs, say in the spring, as the supply chain further and further rights itself and costs come down for inputs.
Well, presumably, I would guess these would be spring bids anyway, as we're nearing, we get this done, we get the RFQ out, we get responses. I would assume that most people are probably not going to do wintertime builds. I'm presuming, I don't know.
We're gonna ask them to get their foundations in right
They're
away.
supposed to be built this year.
They won't be done till spring, but.
Right, so they can still bid lumber, throughout that process.
But I think when you're looking at the trends, what's happening nationwide in certain municipalities, is that even high-end housing is having a benefit once it gets built, and if they're doing in great enough numbers. Because right now, you figure that my mother's house, after she passed, and we put on the market, sold within 72 hours. And it went at a price that we had no idea it would ever go for. But it went to a very nice young woman who had been looking for a house for 3 years, and she'd been renting. And now she'll vacate that rental, and now that nice rental that she had will be able to accommodate somebody that's not in the housing market, but now will rent. And what they're finding, if you're looking at trends, is that whether it's upscale housing, mid-scale housing, or whatnot, what it does, it frees up in particular areas where it's being built at a level, beyond 1 or 2 here and there, is that it does free up rentals, it frees up more moderate rate houses, and the neighborhoods in the community, continue to improve. CNS has done wonderful work through the years, but even pre-Onita in her chair there, and an administration or so ago, we were really thinking about programs such as Midtown Square, but the city and the national economy was not in a position to do that. But our position began improving. We saw the limitations of spot building a nice house, and sometimes the neighborhood not responding to that one nice house. I think you do have to be highly impactful. You have to build that almost entire mini neighborhood within the neighborhood to get that impact going in the surrounding area. And I think we have good examples of this working out for us within Nelson. Anita, did you?
I'm just going to say, or Karen, go big or go home.
Yeah.
Honestly, it's that kind of market, and I think that the number of people who came to our office and said, no one's going to buy those 9 homes. And if that hadn't happened when it did, and now we know, and now we're here, and now we've got cash.
Yes.
Just go big, go home. One or the other. I mean, 5 million with another 5 million will be done in the spring and the summer, and everybody's going to see an entirely new project of homes. And people who are above our 80%, and what we did in NSP from 2011 to 2015, we took those homes that were dilapidated. We took those homes that were about to be demolished, and we made good on those homes, and they sold. And that was after the market, and then that's what helped this market become as big as it is that it was an SP across the country.
Yep.
And now we've got a lot of people who are savvy, who are ready to buy, but there's nothing there.
And the intention is to get people who can afford those houses into those houses as soon as possible, because there's a void of that. So I think we have to take advantage of that market, because the houses we're building are market rate, but this will get people in who can't afford market rate houses, and that they need to be in those neighborhoods.
Yeah, and I don't want to pile on, but I will say I think it's in the industry. It's well understood, at least in the urban development industry, that the best way to drive up prices is to drive down the stock of the houses. And so the best way for us to flatten out the price is to get more houses out there. And at the same time, you don't necessarily say we want to compete with this city or that city or that city, but at the end of the day, the way that Michigan is designed, the cities almost have to compete with one another. And if we're in a good position now. We got all the momentum. We're willing to spend the money to do it, and we've proven that if we spend the money to get our neighborhoods in a position to build, that people will choose us over other neighboring cities that otherwise never had. And that's why you see housing starts in Muskegon up here, and housing starts in some of our neighboring communities that had been absolutely obliterating us in housing starts for the last 2 decades. We're now far ahead of them. And I would just hate to take this momentum that we build and give some of them a chance for a developer, Dave or otherwise, to say, hey, I'm going to go buy this 25 acres in Fruitport and put in a street and subdivide it off and take advantage of this housing market where I can sell houses for even more than down there. We want to create so much demand here that when buyers walk through and see that he did that, they go, wait a minute, why am I going to pay $350 over here when I can pay $175 in Muskegon and live near the things that I already want to do on the weekend and go to the places that I already want to go on the weekend. And if you look around and see what people are doing that are similar to us, whether it's up in Whitehall at Tannery Bay or whether it's in Grand Rapids with some of their infill programs, there is not a comparison in what we're selling houses for compared to what they're selling houses for. You could buy 2 of ours for 1 of theirs. And we're setting a different standard, and we're putting affordability above profit, and we're proving that as a city we're the only ones, right? We're the only ones, I think it was Jake who said it, we're the only ones that can say, we'll take our money over the next 10 years. You know what we'd rather have? You live in here, and you live in here, and you live in here, and you live in here. Oh, and by the way, now I don't have to mow this vacant lot anymore, and the mayor doesn't have to clean up the liquor bottles or whatever they are there all over it. And that's why right now is the time to say, 5 million, let's put 10 million. But let's put as much money into this as possible and make sure that we stay at the front of the line when people are deciding where to buy. Because right now, they're doing a search in 49441 and they're putting in their $225,000 price limit because they're a moderate, reasonable buyer. And they're gonna find that there's 8 houses in Northern Shores that fit that, and then there's 25 in Muskegon. And what's the chances that we're gonna get them? And the next step is saying, what's the chances that we get their kids to go to our schools and, and all those next step things to rebuilding this community back to its proper place, which I said in my housing presentation at the chamber, leading the entire county in every single one of these categories. We've got to do that with investment. It sucks to say that, but it's the only way to do it.
And again, we get the majority of the $5 million back. You know? And I really feel this type of proposal fits the design of transformational investment, because it'd be easy enough to take our little under, our general fund and just spend it like right now. But then without these designs, we don't have money coming back in. For revitalization program, we don't have money coming back in to sustain our park system over the next 20 to 30 years. I know there's a lot of other needs, but at the same time, as you sit through the presentations with, the United States Treasury and the IRS or whatnot, they remind you that, you got to remember to tell people that there's other pots of money that are specifically either being designed or, exist. Unfortunately, only a month's worth of mortgage right now, but, hopefully that can continue to be addressed at the federal level, so that we can take care of what we do best at the municipal level for, continued investment and development, long-term good, for all of us. I like what you said, go big or go home. Commissioner Ramsey?
Yeah, I just want to add something to what Franklin said. When we speak of competition and getting people to our lakeshore, there's a whole other aspect of that we also need to consider, and that's that keeping people that are already here. We spend time building community with each and every one of our neighbors. And for many years, young people thought that they had to get all the education they could from here, go somewhere, get more education, and then move to their forever home. And we want this to be their forever home. And if this opportunity allows them to be able to come home and re-enter this community as a homeowner, a first-time homeowner, or gives them an opportunity to move through that scale of home ownership, and we can keep talent in this community that we nurtured, at the end of the day, we will be a better community for it, because they're already a part of us. They're already a part of the fabric of where we live. And it helps to keep those ideologies that we as Muskegon residents hold close. And so when we talk about how we need to invest to get people here, it's also to keep people here. And so I think that's awesome.
Keep people, not just the youngsters, but retirees, empty nesters. Because how often do you hear, oh my God, this neighborhood is going to pot. It's not as clean as it was when I first bought the house 40, 30 years ago, and so on and so forth. And there's too many empty lots, or too many trashy this or trashy that. And so it keeps
too many trash cans.
Too many trash cans.
Too many trash cans. Too many trash cans. But McLaughlin is going to take care of that. Randy.
But when we can make this type of investment, so that everything that we do isn't just based on enforcement.
Yeah.
Because as neighborhoods degrade, then our entire being is just enforcement.
Yeah.
And why aren't you doing this? Why aren't you picking up the dirty diapers at the beach? Why aren't you picking up the trash in the street on trash day? Why aren't you? But if we start making the you the we, and people can once again feel proud and confident that we really do have each other's backs as friends, neighbors, and see the investments and see the efforts, then people get back involved. Otherwise, you get folks that the kids are gone, they retire, and they say this neighbor doesn't look like the Beaver Cleaver neighborhood 40 years ago when I first moved in. I'm getting the hell out of here and moving to a cul-de-sac in some nondescript outlying something or other someplace. Anyway, I would fully support going big or going home. And
So give me everything I want, Frank, and I support you too.
And one last like push as to why I want to keep
No more explanation on that. Like we've heard from 10 people. Like I was, you got me the first time. So like we had 20 minutes of conversation, and you actually had me the first time because I agree with you. Go big or go home. My thought was in terms of I'm okay with $5 million. My thought was if we staggered it a bit, maybe we'd get more houses because we're at a lower per unit price. We'd get more houses out of it. You explained it very well, though, that we're recycling this money back into a program. So if the costs do come down in the spring, we're recycling that money and we're able to buy more houses. So you had me 20 minutes ago on that point.
Because remember, we're building we have 800 vacant lots. I mean, we're going to fill those suckers up.
Let the record
Whether it's not
show
all
Commissioner Johnson asked that we move topics in a conversation.
Well, there's several other points of this item I want to get to. And so
I just want to highlight and celebrate you for a brief moment, sir.
Cool with $5 million. With a staggered now. So let's touch on some other items within all of this.
take her away.
So we've talked about affordable housing, and one of the things, and you're right, more supply will help bring down costs. So we've talked about affordable housing, and an impetus behind this of moving forward now, because we need to help the folks that we're serving and provide affordable housing. So a couple things that stuck out at me in terms of the minimum requirements is the having to have underground sprinkler system, having to have the wood engineered wood siding and trim, because those are things that raise the price. And and I get it, we want to have quality without a doubt, but is it necessary that we require every single unit to have underground sprinkling if a homeowner that's going to be buying it doesn't want it, need it, never going to use it, or now they're responsible for the cost of flushing it on a periodic basis and keeping maintenance that they don't necessarily want, or maybe they don't want to have that extra cost of running that underground sprinkler. But and the other requirement is sod. I'm like, do we need sod as a requirement for every unit? Maybe someone wants to have a wildflower garden for the front lawn, or a rock garden for the front lawn, that's more environmentally friendly. So is it absolutely necessary that we have these types of requirements that the buyer may not want nor need, and also has the impact of raising costs for the house itself?
Yes, we do not need to have those. I will say it's a balance too, because we heard from the people in the Nelson neighborhood about that 14 houses, that they look cheap or you know what I mean, or they didn't look like the quality that were around them. So I was trying to make sure that they have quality. So for example, the idea of landscaping differently, yeah, I would put that in here. I mean, when the last couple houses that we renovated, the city did, the front yards were mostly rocks and some plantings, because we were trying to make sure that we sold them to somebody who was buying in that price range, $80,000 to $90,000. I think we sold those last two for. The idea was, well, let's make it very low maintenance so that they didn't have to worry about it, and we did those that way. One thing that would help us get there, I think in some neighborhoods it'll be easier. Nelson neighborhood, it'll be easier. The other neighborhoods that we haven't done form-based code and stuff on, and we're trying to build a smaller house on still a bigger lot, I mean, it's going to be really hard to, for example, make that a low maintenance, right? It's going to be mostly grass. It might be, if it's a 60-foot lot and, and 125 or 150 feet deep, it's going to be a lot of yard for somebody to take care of. The idea of making it underground sprinkling, one, it gets your watering on a separate meter, so it makes your watering a lot cheaper than just hooking up a hose like you and I maybe do in our yards right now. My water bill is $250 last month because I paid the sewer on it. But it makes it more affordable for them to take care of their yard. It makes it more automatic for them to take care of their yard. Every day it just sprinkles. I mean, there is value in it. And then the idea of doing something like the landscape strip around it, it's to make their maintenance a little bit easier. So they're not having to weed whack around their house every time. They're not having to pull trees out of the foundation. The idea is that it's a nice, clean, easy spot for them to maintain. So there are things that we could do that would knock a few $1,000s off the house here and there. But I want to make sure that we don't make it very clear which houses we built for low mod people versus which houses were not built for low mod people, if that makes sense. So the idea of putting somebody in a quality house, the amount of compliments we got about the engineered wood siding and how rich the color was and how much nicer it looked versus the vinyl siding, it tells me that that's an investment that people would make if they could afford it. And it's really not unaffordable. I mean, it's a few $1,000s more for the whole house. But if we're only talking about, profits and losses, then yeah, I would say Dave Dusenang will tell you what to cut out of the house to get the cost down. He'll absolutely tell you. But when it's done and you notice that you will notice that there's 4 less windows and, and beginner siding and beginner shingles versus architectural and an upgrade. You and I will notice them when we drive by them and they start deteriorating. So I was really just trying to set a higher standard. I think you're right. I think we could knock some things out of here and make them more affordable. But I think if we're going to put, like, say, a person that's modest means in a house, I'd love to put them in a house that's like very marketable when they're ready to sell it. To a market rate buyer, whether it's in 2 years or 5 years or 7 years from now. Set them up to be successful, and not set them up to replace a roof in 10 years, and not set them up to have to power wash their siding all the time, and things like that.
Vinyl degrades so darn quick. It's unbelievable.
Especially the cheaper stuff. But that engineered wood siding, it's just, like I said, go buy the house on Pine and it looks so much nicer than all that. And we have a vinyl siding program, so I'm not against doing vinyl siding because we do have a great vinyl siding program. But man, there's just something about the way that looks. And I just want people to drive through and be like, see that the city built here 10 years ago with their ARPA money? And it still looks good. It still looks good today. It looks just as good as the day that it was, that it was built.
Yeah, no, I absolutely get the impetus to want to have high quality. I'm just concerned about having that be a minimum, and I was trying to differentiate between, market rate or otherwise, but just a minimum across the board for that. If we're trying to get have affordable housing and address that, just concerned about adding these minimums that raise the cost and potentially unnecessarily. So, whether it is engineered wood or vinyl or fiber cement siding, having other options and not dictating that necessarily.
Yeah. Well, it's hard because like when we went through with Dave on the houses, one of the most expensive things for him to do was put the bedroom on the first floor. But to us, we're going to say that's an important thing.
That's
yes. Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely.
But I mean, so there are some things we're going to look at and be like, yeah, don't do the in-ground sprinkling. And Dave's like, man, that's a couple $1,000, but it'll pay for it. It'll really be impactful. Whereas why making the foundation big enough to have a kitchen and a living room and a dining room and a bedroom and a bathroom on the first floor adds $10,000 or something, or whatever the number is. I'm making that up. But I remember if you look at most houses they built, they don't have bedrooms on the first floor because the foundation had to be so large to accommodate.
So will we have, in terms of making these properties as cost efficient or economical to operate, over a number of years, are we also going to, I don't see language in this, but should we add it or otherwise, in terms of energy efficiency, in terms of, energy efficiency, whether that's insulation appliances, what have you, low flow water, that kind of thing, and have we considered the prospect of solar panels or solar shingles on these homes so that we can reduce their costs? And
I didn't consider those in a lot of ways, in part because the new energy code that exists for a new home, the energy efficiency of new homes is so high right now. It'd be different to say like, hey, God, I want to put shingles on my older house that has a high energy cost to get my costs down. But I guess maybe we could put them on there and they'd have no energy cost, right? They could just pay for it kind of up front in their purchase. But we went through that with Dave and talking with Kirk at the time, who was no longer Safeville, and we went over the energy code, and it was the requirements of the energy code to build a new house right now. It's not worth trying to say let's get it 5% better to get like LEED certified or whatever. They're so strong right now with the new energy code and the new building code that we're at the point now where we've essentially invested all the low-hanging fruit money into making these houses really energy efficient. They're 2x6. They're all insulated, really well. They have like 95% efficiency furnaces. And especially if they build them, now they're putting the furnaces, they figured out how to engineer the furnace in the right location where it's the most efficient of all. And I would say that going into a new house and paying more for it, you might still end up paying less on a monthly basis when you count your mortgage is higher, but your gas and electric bill are down by $200-$300 a month.
In that vein, can you perhaps, with your limited time, and I know you're wanting us to vote on this tomorrow, but can you look into the prospect of solar shingles? Solar panels you can add later. Like if the homeowner wants to have solar panels, and perhaps if we can tie it in with our local Chart House, was it Chart House Solar?
Chart House Energy.
Chart House Energy, that local company, we could potentially partner with them with this program to make solar panels available at time of purchase. But solar shingles you need to install right off the jump as you're constructing. So
yeah, I can look into it.
That prospect of incorporating that, because that might be a little bit pricier up front, but that's going to save a lot of money long term, and it's better for the environment as well, reducing carbon emissions. The other thing that I wonder, since this is our program, we're putting this money up, $5 million, a lot of money, is, and Commissioner Ramsey touched on it earlier, which is trying to maximize the benefit for the local economy in terms of getting locals on the job, local contractors, subcontractors used, local suppliers, prospects for how do we incorporate maybe an RFQ, a commitment to work with our MCEC on their program they're trying to launch with the City of School, where they've got students working on these types of sites, gaining credit, gaining money, gaining skills, and then having that potential pathway into an apprenticeship with a trades union. So how can we tie that in to this program to maximize that benefit for our residents and our youth and our local economy?
Yeah, well, one thing we could maybe consider doing is peeling off one house, for example, and making that money available for one of those programs, right? I mean, sometimes, in Battle Creek, I lived in a house that wasn't built in place by the school, right? That might make a whole lot of sense to see if there is a opportunity to partner with the ISD or whomever and a local builder to actually build a house that is built by students with tradespeople, kind of overseeing them. I know Dave's been working a little bit with Phyllis Slaughtermill about the idea of getting more people involved, especially people of color involved in the building process, and I think that's been difficult. They've been having maybe trouble getting people to come and be interested in it. But the idea of having local subs, Dave's been pretty clear. I want to hear from all the subs, every single sub. If you got a local sub, send them my way, and if they can do the work and they're price competitive, then I'll use them. A good example is he had been using Keene Lumber for all the houses, and he made a move outside of the city because they were no longer competitive on price. So now he gets his lumber from outside of the city. But he wouldn't have made that decision, if they were still competitive.
Now they're standard lumber acquired them.
Can we include language in the RFQ addressing that? Like asking, what are your commitments or intentions to, hire locally or buy locally, source your supplies locally, or potentially partner with our local school systems, MC, ISD, whomever, on that kind of program?
Yeah, we can ask under submission requirements that they give us a local, essentially their plan for using local labor and or suppliers. I guess we can ask them specifically for that. And the big thing is we want to get them in the door so we can see who they are. So the goal is having more. We know Dave's going to be at the door. We probably know Alan Edmonds going to come, and we're going to try to make sure Rudy Briggs, puts in an application. But other than that, we haven't seen a whole lot of interest from many other builders. Maybe Rising Up, but not a whole lot of home builders here in Muskegon. They just haven't responded to our RFPs, and they're not really building. Boss Homes could be one of them. Dahan could be one of them. But nowadays, all the home builders have pretty much turned into custom home builders, and they're building high-end homes. and making big profits on them. And to come here, we're going to really be tempering their profits like we did with Dave. If you remember his Midtown Square stuff, he had baked in there like $5,000 profit per home. So even if we made all the money, over those 16 houses he built for us, it wasn't gonna, it wasn't what he was normally making on a house in the suburbs. So we just got to make sure that we're careful that we're careful on that. But I think we can ask them this question: give us your local labor and supply plan. What's your plan? Are you used to working with our local labor? Are you used to working? Dave should be able to do that. Rudy Briggs should be able to do that. Alan Edwin should be able to do that because they have been building and they have built here. But a builder, a random builder from the Grand Rapids area that's never built here, we probably could be skeptical that they would have the contacts and the context necessary to do that.
Can we also ask if they have a history or policy of paying prevailing wage? Because this kind of intersects somewhat with our person policy agreement where we do incent if you pay prevailing wage. So the purchase policy doesn't apply necessarily to this program, but if we have something to incorporate prevailing wage into it, that's saying that's important to us, or having understanding so that you guys have that information on the committee in terms of reviewing the policy, or not the policy, reviewing the contractors or the companies that are submitting proposals. Submitting proposals, so we have a deadline of end of this month for that if we proceed. So that gives them just about 3 weeks, which is pretty significant proposals. Is it, if we want to try to get as many as possible, do we want more time, or there'll just be opportunity in the future to...
See, all we're trying to get are their qualifications. We're not asking them to tell us what house they want to build on what lot. That's what we'll get after we've decided, okay, we want to use these 3 contractors. Then we'll once they've demonstrated that they're qualified and capable and they can meet our qualifications, then we'll probably spend the next 30 days or longer, right? Because we might not, the contract we enter into might not give them, if they want to build 10 houses, it might not give them 10 at once. It might say, okay, well, we're ready to award the first 3 houses to Dave, or the first 2 houses to Ruby Briggs, or the first 5 houses to Alan Edwin. If they've got a good plan in place and somebody comes to us and shows, hey, check this out, I'm gonna go into Jackson Hill and this vacant lot that the city owns, I'm gonna put in 9 houses and I can do it this affordably, we might bring that to you guys and say, okay, check this out. Rudy Briggs can build us 9 houses right here for this price and we think this is the one that we need to move on. But we'll know more when we see them. We're hoping to get, like I said, more robust lists of builders to us, recognizing that they're all busy, and when they're all busy, they're gonna pick the projects that make.
How are we going to disseminate this or get the word out about this program?
Well, we'll send it to the ones that we know of, right? We'll put it on our website, and maybe we'll try to get some press out of it. But there's also a couple groups, that call us all the time when we have an RFP, like Building Trade magazines. They want to push it out to their people. We don't always, like I said, we don't always get a lot of response from that. With sometimes you might have like the local, like you're saying, the local subs are interested. They got to go find a general contractor and and partner with them, or they got to step up and and take on the idea of building a whole house. But otherwise, it's really we're relying on those actual home builders, the people that build from top to bottom, and almost none of those home builders provide any of that. They provide very little of the actual labor. They all use subcontractors.
So once we're at the position of identifying they've all submitted their qualifications and the committee is reviewing who to select and move forward with the development agreement, could we have a contract or subcontract fair kind of thing, so that we can bring folks in our community and pair them up or connect them with these builders?
Yep, we can do that for sure. To put it in context, so I would yes, I think that would be helpful. We'll get some. But I would say that would be the perfect thing to do if we had like like they do in the suburbs when they're getting ready to build a 300 house subdivision. They do stuff like that. Ours is still going to be pretty small. This is going to be a guy that's looking for subs to build 4 houses. So it's still going to be pretty small potatoes for some of these subcontractors, to come in and make changes to the way they do work just to try to get in here. But I got a feeling the good news is all the subcontractors are busier than they probably even want to be right now. So none of them. It's not like 2009 9 were building houses, and all the subcontractors are begging for work. They're all writing their own. They're writing their own check or whatever. They're making their own price, and they're all doing pretty good. So that's why I feel pretty good about saying let's find the one that'll do the right quality at the right price, because it's not like if we don't pick Weber, they're going to have a whole bunch of wood that they can't sell. They're selling all the stock that they have is getting pushed out there.
And thank you all. I mean, I still have, I think, a couple more points, questions, but I realize we spent a good amount of time on this already, but this is a substantial program
Yes.
that we're putting $5 million, a huge amount of our ARPA funds into this. And
Absolutely, go ahead and make your
impact
points.
of this program is great for our community. And so thank you for staff's work on this, because it's very important. So what is I'm just curious, I noticed that in the event that the house sells for less, we are going to ensure that the developer is made whole 100% essentially.
Yeah.
And if the house sells for more, the developer gets a little bit larger share of the net income, 60% versus 40%. So just wondering, is that just what the?
I'm just trying to keep them engaged. So we want to mitigate their risk, because we know we're going into neighborhoods to build houses where the comparables are substantially below what it's going to cost to build these. So that's the big risk, right? The big risk is they would never go in there and build these on their own, probably not.
Yeah.
But we also, not yet, not until we're done, until we prove the market. Well, and obviously we've proven the market because somebody's building a house over there on Muskegon Avenue.
There's a
It's
few.
not us.
There's a few popping up around the city. Yeah.
There's a house being built on
Independently
Muskegon Avenue by Rising Gun that's obviously building for somebody.
Yeah.
So that's good. So, I mean, we're getting there. We're absolutely getting there. But the idea of building them on spec is really the thing. Don't build them for a custom home, a custom home buyer or something like that. But the idea of somebody building a spec house in the city, and taking that risk up front, investing their own capital into it. That's the risk that we're trying to get them really comfortable with it. So maybe the next time we enter into the same agreement with them, it's 60-40 our way or 50-50 our way, or they take a piece of the risk. And that can be part of the argument is, hey, I'll tell you what, if we lose money, you're going to take it 25% on the chin, but if we make money, you keep 80% of it. You know what I mean? And really start to make them see, because normally they would be taking 100% of the risk and 100% of the reward. But like I said, right now, pretty much everything that's built it's built custom. So they know what their profits are going right into it. So they know, all right, I'm going to build this house, it's going to take 6 months, but my profits are $40,000. And we're just not able to show them that, right now. And we don't want to. We don't want to make $40,000, because if they make $40,000, then the house is $300,000.
Yeah.
So.
It's not a problem motive for us, but we also don't want to lose our shirt.
Yeah.
We want to recycle the funds into
Yes.
this program and build more and more and more housing across the city until we don't have vacant lots anymore.
Yep, and we know this. We know that for the most part, if we're subsidizing it, it's because we're encouraging them to sell to somebody who has a certain affordability level.
Yeah.
But we didn't think that was fair to put that, even really any of that on their shoulders, because in the free market they would never, for the most part, they wouldn't be like, you're a nice guy, Ken.
Yeah.
I'm gonna sell it to you for a loss so you can get more. That's just not.
Realistic.
Yeah. It's not.
Unless they were in dire straits, it would be
Unless they
selling
really needed to sell
their
it.
house for any houses for a loss. In terms of selling to people, and you at 125%. So we're going to do 125%, just to get clarity, because it.
Yeah. Well, here's what I was really trying to. I wanted to say 120 and lower, but I was thinking to have that little bit of leeway. Like right now, we're aiming for 120% lower, but that leeway for those couple extra people that are just at or near the 120, that extra 5% would kind of give us a little bit of a reach into the next price bracket. But honestly, 120 is a fine number. I think 125 is a fine number. Those people are struggling to find houses right now that they can afford. Both of those price ranges, both of those income levels are struggling to find.
So how are we going to, what's the mechanics of selling those houses and ensuring that the people that we're selling them to aren't going to be all in that 120 to 125% AMI, that we're actually going to have a good distribution of housing that we're selling to people at 80% AMI or, you know, 70 or 90 or 100, like that's not all top loaded at that 120 to 125 right there.
So one way to do it, I was thinking about that. One way to do it, so when we did Midtown Square Phase 2, we purposely did not list every house at once. We waited, a couple got done, we listed them, sold those, listed some more, sold those. One way around it, if we're willing to take the risk that our houses will age on the market, is we could put them all up for sale immediately, you know, once we break ground on them. That would conceivably give anybody that's looking a fair amount of time to make a decision on if they want to make a move on one of those houses, rather than to come up and people scurry in there and, you know, and turn into a bidding war. So I think we can get around that by putting more of them up for sale well before they're done, and giving people that are lower income the opportunity to come in there, and if, you know, if market rate people are starting to gobble them up, or the 125s or the 120s are starting to gobble them up, there's essentially more to go around. But I don't think, I think from a fair housing standpoint, it'd be really hard if people come and they're income qualified, whether at 125 or 120 or 80, and they give us an offer that we can accept. I don't know that we can necessarily, you know, deny them, you know, the ability to buy that house.
So where's the minimum? Because I don't see any minimum threshold. So like if someone is at 50% AMI, they're qualified for a house at $80,000, they could bid on, they could submit an offer for a $200,000 house and say, I want this, and we're going to subsidize $120,000 of it?
Well, I think that we would have to make a decision, you know, internally if that's a big enough, if that's a reasonable subsidy. I don't think we go out there and tell them what our maximum subsidy is, right? We'll let the market try to dictate that. But yeah, I mean, if we're doing really well and we're going, man, we sold 5 of them at market rate for a profit, and we got 5 more out there, we got some 20s. I mean, the idea that we would sell one to a 50% AMI that went out there and was like, hey, I got my down payment, I can afford to buy it for $75,000-$80,000. I mean, I think we would come to you and say, hey, this is a reasonable, you know, in the totality, we sold 10 houses, and one of them at a steep discount, but the other ones we got, you know, at closer to cost. I would say that would be a win for us to try to get somebody at that income level into one of these. And probably if they're at that income level, they're at it at a point in their life that they've already had a house. They might be selling a house, so it could be like somebody who created some generational wealth. The property values went up in their neighborhood. They don't really have a high-paying job, but they happen to have a house on Webster that it was in their family that they bought for $20,000 that's now worth $150,000. They can income qualify and put a lot of cash down on a house, and they would still qualify because we wouldn't look at their assets. You know.
I got a question here from Commissioner Ramsey.
Yeah, to support that, is there a way for us as a city to foster relationships with lenders who typically court low-to-mod families, and how we can have them set up so that if I, as a low-to-mod family, come in and say, hey, I've got some money saved, but I don't know how to do this.
Yeah.
Here's a lender that you can work with that is a good, upstanding person, and they loan to people across the board for multitudes of endeavors. Become a resource.
Yeah, we learned when we did the deal with Van Dyke Mortgage on the convention center that is one of the areas that they actually spend a lot of time on. And they don't say low mod, but it's like credit, people with credit issues, and a lot of times, you know, they're kind of in that same category, and they kind of have us, in their mind, a specialty to help get those folks financed. And they also work with, I think it's Coastal Credit Union, which has a little more flexibility than them as their partner, and they pretty much, Mario pretty much describes it as me as like, I can finance almost anybody, and anybody that I can't finance, if they'll ever get a mortgage, we'll get it from Coastal Credit Union, because I'm on the board there, and that's where we go with our, you know, with our hardest, you know, to.
Gotcha.
But you know, that leads me to the conversation that Oneida and I had, I don't know, about a month ago, this idea that there are a lot of people in these same neighborhoods that are sitting on houses they bought 7 years ago on land contract from people at 8 and 10% interest. And the idea that we could connect those people to these same, the Marios of the world, and say, you know,
absolutely,
there actually is a way for you to keep your house, lower your costs, and get into the actual, you know, into the actual lending the actual bona fide lending, circuit. Now that you have some equity in there, and you can go to a lender that otherwise wouldn't have touched you because you didn't have enough equity, and you're like, hey, my house is worth $150,000 now, but I only owe 30 on it. The idea that you couldn't get a mortgage on that, I would think that would be pretty sad of our mortgage industry to not be able to lend to somebody in that kind of situation at a reasonable rate.
Sounds like we're putting together a resource fair for home ownership at the new Vandyck Mortgage Center Convention Center.
Sounds good.
Center. Follow-ups, Commissioner Johnson?
Will that be in terms of the selling to the income restricted units? The language is for the developer to be responsible for verifying that information. Is that going to be a requirement as part of their monthly reporting to us? That information, sharing it so that we have it, or would it be prudent for us, because we have a history of doing that already in CNS, would it be prudent for us to do that to ensure that those units are actually selling to people we intend them to sell to that are income qualified?
I think there may be a possibility that we could. My goal really is that the developer is essentially handling the sale. So when the offers are coming through them. So I want it to be one of the things that they vet. Like right now, they make sure people have a pre-qualification letter. But that can be part of it is pre-qualification letter with income verification. I think it's natural for it to come through the real estate side versus for somebody to come. Again, we don't want to make it cumbersome. We don't want to make an extra step to us. And what we might find is that we're naturally getting people that we don't even have to tell them that it's a subsidized, income restricted, unit, because they might just naturally. The goal is that the people are naturally coming here because they're more affordable, and we're naturally attracting the buyers that are in that, without, without saying, well, before you can buy it, you got to go down and see Onita and let her verify your income. So I think we'll take that as part of the step. When they send me over a purchase agreement that's got the pre-approval, I'll say, well, make sure you include the income verification in there at that time.
Okay, that seems perfectly reasonable. Given that we are going to be subsidizing 50% of the units that we're building, the anticipation is that we may have a subsidy for them to some extent. Are we going to be holding a certain percentage of the $5 million in reserve then within that ARP infill housing fund so that can cover the subsidy? Or is just going to be putting all $5 million into building houses and hope that we get a couple sales first at market rate or something to put money back in there to cover the subsidies?
Ken can tell you, I don't think the way Midtown Square 2 went, we never borrowed the full $3 million. It just, by the way these processes go, they pretty much make a monthly draw from us, so they'll draw a little bit each month. And then as the process moves further along, some houses are sold, and then the money goes back in there, and the process moves along, and they get another draw. And really, by the time they make that last draw, it's 30 to 60 days after the houses are complete. So, I mean, I would say that the likelihood that we have all $5 million in there and haven't sold a house yet, it'll be pointing out that we have a pretty major problem with the program. So, no, I wouldn't expect that we would have all $5 million deployed at any given time. Once the first house comes in and gets sold, we then probably have enough in our reserves to start, subsidizing a couple houses.
Mm-hmm. Okay. But we will have to, after 45 days, buy the units from the developer.
Essentially, pay them off them off for their investment, and then that way we can make them whole. That way they don't look at it.
Current market, they're not lasting 45 days. So
it should not be an issue. It's priced really wrong at that point.
45 minutes.
Yeah, 9 days on market.
Yep.
Okay.
And again, ours are going to be significantly under what the new houses are selling in other places, so it shouldn't be an issue.
Okay. And I think final question is, so has our legal counsel reviewed the
development agreement,
template development agreement that we are including in here?
No, he has not, but all I did was change around the one that he did approve for Dave Dusending. I didn't want to spend a lot of time paying John, now we pay him hourly, to review this until we know that I've got a developer. So presumably some developers will come in, we'll finalize the agreement to meet each of their needs. John will sign off on them, then they'll come here. So I think we just had time. I didn't want to get ahead of myself because I know this. Each developer is probably going to need some tweaks to, based on what they're proposing.
Right.
So that's why it says in here, hey, this is just a sample. It's a form. You should expect that these sorts of things are what you're going to need to comply with in order to build houses in this program. So it's no surprises.
So as we're going ahead right now, we are just trying to draw in the qualified individuals and see who X out there.
And John might even say we don't need to build a fund. Remember, John wanted us to build that fund because it had to do with how we could spend money out of the economic development fund to guarantee where the money came from. He might not have these concerns because it's, ARPA money that's specifically meant for these sorts of things. So he might not say, you don't need to create a fund for this, he might say that that's unnecessary. So we'll find out when we put these in front of them.
Excellent. Who are all the principals that are involved with the contours of this program?
Oh, I mean, the whole economic development department, Onita, I would say that department meets, we have that, we should find a new name for it, but we made an offhand joke about some of these guys being in my posse one time, and so now they have a posse meeting every Monday, which is essentially the whole suite on the second floor. They meet every Monday, they talk about stuff like this, and this is the kind of thing that comes out of that meeting. So I couldn't say it was Pete's idea or Jake's or Anita's, but it's what comes out when they sit down every week and we talk about what needs to happen in the community.
The development services division, essentially.
Yeah, the whole division.
Okay. Excellent work. Thank you all.
Which Jake's in charge of now, but we won't get credit for this because he's only been on the job for
20
days. We'll give one day.
But we love you anyway, Jake. Jake, we love you.
Which I think you guys saw my email. Jake was offered the position of development services director. So cat's out of the bag.
Congratulations, Jake. I can take that off my list of things to talk about.
There you go. Okay. Are you ready to move on then? Item number 5, Michigan Municipal League designation of voting delegates. Well, I got to be there anyway because I'm on the board of trustees, so.
We were just hoping that we would have the selections and then we can just put them under consent tomorrow, if you could let us know today what that might be.
So the mayor's the delegate and we need an alternate?
Yep, and an alternate.
That's in the case the mayor cannot go, or?
Yep.
Yes, correct.
But you're going?
I'm
So,
I think I have to.
So we shouldn't spend a lot of time on this is what I'm trying to get at? This is
No, Frank can go.
Okay.
He
No,
might be going.
anybody can,
Yeah.
but Ann used to do it too.
Oh, you want to do it? You want to be that alternate?
Sure.
Okay. I move to make. Oh, I know movement.
No.
No,
We're doing it tomorrow.
So
Consent agenda.
tomorrow.
But now
Trying to
I-
move things along.
But that was basically, it's always been,
After that long.
who's actually going to the convention?
Yeah, pretty much, yeah.
And so, well, as long as the mayor is going, make him be the delegate.
All right. So we got Ann as the alternative. Is everyone cool with that?
Yeah, in case
Where is the
I get
convention?
lost.
Grand Rapids.
It's in Grand Rapids.
Oh,
If it was somewhere far away, I'd be like, me.
Okay. All right. That takes care of item number 5. Is there any member of the public that would like to address the commission at this
there's any
point?
public here today.
Well, there's all kinds of
We got
citizens here.
Oh,
They-
sorry.
They all live here. If not, then I'd entertain a motion to adjourn so that Dan can have his meeting.
So moved.
It's gonna make an announcement.
Support.
Oh, you are?
Second.
Yeah, but that's what I get. Okay.
It's been moved by Commissioner Johnson, supported by Commissioner Emery to adjourn before going into our next meeting. All in favor?
Aye.
Any in opposition? Thank you. You wanted to say something?
Yeah, before Dan starts his meeting, Pete's gone, but I want to give a shout out. We got a call from